Okay. Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming. We're gonna start off our 2024-2025 school year with the first curriculum committee meeting of the school year. Welcome. Uh, do we have any public comment for tonight at this meeting? Okay, we don't have any public comment, so we will have no committee responses. As far as approving the minutes from the June 2024 curriculum work session, I'm the only remaining member on the committee from last year, so we don't have two people to do that, but we won't have two people to do that, so we could check the rule book, but I approve it. And if that's good enough, then that's great. We don't have on the agenda tonight appointing a chair for the committee because we don't have all of our participants in attendance tonight. So we're going to just move that item to the next meeting. Hopefully all three of us will be here just to make sure that everyone is represented in that decision. Is that sound good? Okay, so we'll move that to next time. And if there's no objections, I'll serve as interim chair for the moment, for just for tonight. And then next month we can decide if I get the gig or not. Okay. And okay, that's great. So tonight we have one very important thing that we're going to talk about that might take up the whole time. And then we have maybe one other item on the agenda if we have time. But the first thing we're going to talk about tonight are the district comprehensive improvement plans. And we have several people at the table tonight who will be discussing those. And then surely we can have some time for questions and go from there.
Right. Good evening. My name is Lynn Klinkowski, and I am the evaluation officer. And I've had the great pleasure of supporting our 4 schools in developing their plans and also the district improvement plan. So we'll talk about those tonight. Lauren Wright and Dan McGrath, principals at Boynton and DeWitt, will also be joining us. They are on their way from some family events. Next slide. Oh, I can do it here. Oh, the clicker. Thanks, Emily. All right. Now, how do I can go backwards. All right. We're in it now. So just a quick overview of how we ended up on the list at the state level. So New York State's accountability system uses several different metrics of success, of student success in its accountability plan. That includes achievement on New York State ELA, math, and science exams, also social studies at the high school level, graduation rates, chronic absenteeism, and English language learners, the progress of those students building mastery of the English language. For the 24-25 upcoming school year. So the state only used the first indicators of achievement and graduation rate to identify schools. They didn't even have to look to those other measures when identifying schools that fall in the level 1 performance or the bottom 10% of schools in the state. So all of our designations are based just on achievement on the New York State exams. There we go. So,
Lynn, I'm so
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Can you just repeat that one more time? So you're saying all 4 of those are used as measures, but when designating schools, they only use the one?
Yes, in this past cycle, because they were able to identify enough schools for the federal government, the state has to identify at least 5% of the lowest performing Title I schools for both the elementary, middle level, and high school. So once they met that threshold, they didn't look to the other indicators.
Thank you.
Yep. Schools that were performing in that bottom 10% or at that level 1 performance level on those achievement exams when compared to other schools in the state were identified as comprehensive support and improvement schools, or CSI schools. So that's the all students group. You are a comprehensive support school. If it was just a group of students within the school based on various designations. Then the school was labeled as a targeted support and improvement school, so a TSI school. If you did not fall in that level 1 for anything, your school is labeled a local support and improvement school. That formerly was what the state called good standing schools, but they really changed that language because intentionally they wanted to communicate that improvement is a continuous process and all schools should engage in that. So for our 2023-24 accountability designations, which we are presenting plans based on this year, we had 4 schools designated: Enfield, a CSI for its all student subgroup, and then BJM, Boynton, and DeWitt for Black students, and BJM also for economically disadvantaged students. Those are TSI schools. So because we have 1 or more schools that have been identified, we also as a district are identified as a target district. I think it's important to contextualize, not to minimize, but contextualize just what data is used in these designations. So it's a pretty narrow measure of achievement. You can see up here the number of students and test results used in each school that this designation is based on. So 69 students at Enfield and 123 tests. 92 students at BJM and 121 tests, 32 students at Boynton, and 32 at DeWitt. So we're talking fewer than 300 students, right, out of our 5,000 students that went into these designations. So again, not to minimize, just contextualize. The state provides a really, I think, which has been a really helpful process that schools and the district must work through when developing their improvement plans. It's kind of a 5-step process in which schools engage a stakeholder group that includes educators from the building, caregivers that do not serve as staff in the building. So the state is really explicit about that they want caregivers that are not staff members involved in the process. And then also engaging student voice through student interviews and surveys is a required part of the process. So our schools and us as a district engaged in this planning process where we do some envisioning work to imagine what it is we'd like to see and do, and how we're defining student success. Looking at the data, so both quantitative and qualitative, including those student interviews. And then using that information to really inform the plan, the commitments, and the action steps or the key strategies that are going to be used. So this improvement planning process is what we're going to be talking to you about and what came out of those processes. Any questions about the process before we hop in and share our first plan?
Just wanted to clarify on the student surveys. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we all families in the district complete a survey at the end of the year that's both about like, this is how my child feels in school and this is how I feel about the school.
Yep.
Are the surveys that you do and then the follow-up interviews that you do in relation to this designation separate to that, or do you take the findings from that survey and then follow up? Just curious about the process
Yeah.
there.
So it's a little bit of a both and. So we did
Okay.
use those end of year surveys, which were for caregivers, staff, and then students in grades 6 through 8 to inform our plans. Also, and principals will talk about, also some principals created their own individualized student surveys that they used, and then interview processes were done in the individual buildings. So both and.
Thank you.
Great. Enfield's first.
So Lynn talked a little bit about the process. They have the state has you work through and come up with 2 to 4 commitments. And for Enfield Elementary School, we really, even though as Lynn said, the state only designated CSI schools based on test scores this year. We also did dive into the data, and we identified that our attendance, we had chronic absenteeism at a very high rate that we felt like we needed to address that as well. So you'll see in our commitments that's kind of commitment 1 and commitment 2 go together, engaging with our families and our communities in an authentic way, wanting to make our families feel welcome. And actually really, we've been trying very hard to create true two-way dialogue and communication. It's one of the things that came back on our surveys as well, like families feeling like they were getting information, but didn't know exactly how to express their desires. So that's that. The second one is committing to improve attendance. This is another year in a row. So we started out and we did improve our attendance by about 10 percentage points last year. And we're just trying to incrementally improve attendance. It's a real major focus for us. Students have to be in school to learn. And then the final commitment is an aligned, engaging, and authentic curriculum that really looks at those math and ELA test scores. So below each of those commitments, you kind of dive in and tease out the key strategies. How are you going to do this? And so these are, working with Lynn and the team. This is kind of like a look at some of the major points. So expanding our school program, our after school program with homework help and tutoring. We extended this to cover most of the school year, and we expanded it into the school day. Historically, our after school program has served 3 through 5. We noticed in our data that we tend to see an improvement in attendance on, we call it Sunrays, is our after school program. So we tend to see that. We also utilize that time to provide some tutoring, but that was kind of dependent on which program the kids chose. There's a lot of choice. And so we're looking to expand that program and then also expand the after school tutoring portion to all of those programs so that any student that's involved. And then also through conversation, the kindergarten through 2nd, extending the school day is really long for them. And so thinking creatively and looking at those win time and other times like lunch bunches and lunch groups. So looking to expand that into the day so that they can get support. We also have identified 3 teachers to be lead teachers for each of our areas of focus. So that's at SEL and family engagement, math and literacy. So we have 3 now lead teachers that will be leading PLC work throughout the year. And we've added additional days in the afternoons for that work to happen. And they also have some time freed up during the day to do observations, to do some coaching, to get into some of those planning times with teachers throughout the day. School-wide morning meetings have been a practice for Infield. We've spent quite a bit of time over this summer with our SEL team working to really align that practice with Ruler and Second Step, which are 2 programs that we use in the district to address SEL work. And then the aligned math and ELA programs. And that's something that we've been working on as a district. And if I can give a plug, it's been really amazing to work on the DCIP this year, the district improvement plan with Lynn and the team, because we are seeing a lot of alignment in that area and having their support and talking to our colleagues in the secondary schools about vertical alignment as well has been important. And that's a continued program for this year. We're also piloting the new K through 2 ELA programs. We have a literacy summit in about halfway through the year. We're taking a reading team and a couple of additional teachers. The literacy summit, hoping to bring back some of the latest learning ideas. Again, we have an aligned program now and just really looking to build the most robust program we can and continue to have that new professional development coming in. And again, taking those lead teachers to those things to bring them back to continue to lead that work as well with their colleagues. And then we have a community engagement TA who is going to support that two-way communication with families. We had a phenomenal family night last night. Had an incredible turnout, and like we're able to make a lot of connections. We were able to go through our family handbook, which has been something that we've been building up over the years, really trying hard. That's our major focus for us this year with our families, is to create opportunities for true dialogue and feedback. So, you know, one of the things that we were working on today was Friday morning coffee in our welcome center, whereas folks are dropping off, they can drop in, and we kind of working through different themes for those mornings, so that people can actually say like, oh, I want to come to the one where, you know, Mr. H is talking, or maybe the one where our first graders are presenting something. And then our success targets decreasing to 20% of our students being marked chronically absent. We do work with folks at the state level who help us write these plans. One of the things that we've talked about a lot, she reminds us that this is really a 3 to 4 year plan, and to not try to do everything in 1 year, to take them off in chunks. So trying to address that absenteeism rate by about 10% per year. Last year felt really good. It felt like it was manageable. It felt like we were able to really support many of our families. And so we're looking to continue that in resource support and figure those pieces out. 50%, our PTA is a piece of this, and this is just family engagement for us. It's also obviously a really important opportunity for us to engage with our families. So increasing our PTA, we call it small but mighty, which is fun, but we really need more. And so last night was a big push for that as well. 70% of our 3rd through 5th grade students participating in Sunrays. We have found that Sunrays is really impactful for attendance, for engagement. And now that we're expanding that tutoring piece, that homework help piece, we're really trying to make that a robust program. We're looking at in-class data with everyone else. Fewer than 50% of our students will score below grade level, and at least 20% of the students who are scoring below grade level will show above average growth. So we're looking at those pieces that we've put into our schedule, like the what I need time, where we'll utilize the in-class intervention to address literacy scores, but really trying to target that. The E² we've been using for a few years now, and our goal is to have 100% of our classrooms administering the assessment, 30% of students being marked proficient, and then the student scores on the New York State ELA and math assessments to improve by 10%. I would say how do I say this mathematically? By 10 percentage points, not 10% of 20%, but like to go from 25 to 35% is the goal. Okay.
Are we gonna,
Yeah, how do you want to?
yeah, like, are we gonna go kind of school plan by plan, and then we can ask questions and then go to the next plan? Okay, I had written questions down for all the different plans, so, I'll start. Okay, so I guess I really like the plan, actually. I think it's really good it meets my criteria of what I'm looking for a plan. Obviously, when somebody says they think it's good, it's their own criteria. So I'm one board member, it's my criteria. I like that teachers are going to be giving weekly homework packets. I'm excited about the Sunrays program. I had a question about how transportation works with people who participate in the Sunrays program, if that's a barrier for anybody or how that works.
It is, and that's one of the things that our community engagement TA also is our transportation liaison. So we have a long history of kind of problem solving that. At Enfield Elementary School, it continues to be an issue because we have 100% of our kids are transported either by their caregivers or by a bus. The transportation department has been fantastic. They've worked with us. We bus most of the kids. We're able to bus most of the kids home at 4:30 after they finish their routes with the secondary schools.
Mm-hmm. Okay. My other question is something like, is it possible to formalize something for grades K-2? Because I feel like you have a good, like operationally definable plan for the kids in grades 3 to 5 about what you'd like to see for them. And I understand what you're saying about K-2 and that extending the day is complicated because they're little. And then you mentioned lunch bunch and some other things like that. Is there a way to put some language in the plan to just say something about that? Or is there a reason that you didn't?
I think a big focus for us at K-2 right now, we've got the really great reading program, which we launched and needs refinement and fidelity work.
Sure.
And then we're piloting the new literacy programs, and then Eureka Squared itself is very rigorous for those groups. And so I think like our focus for right now is on expanding that into the school day, into those lunch bunches. We may look at that in the future. I'd like to, survey our families and kind of figure out what they feel about that as well. Our after school program, which is run by Enfield Community Center, does have, a decent group of K-2, and we've talked about maybe we can engage them first and see where we can go from there. But that after school program run by Enfield Community Center is largely play-based. And so giving them kind of a break from the day.
Okay.
We do have one of the requirements of these plans too, as we think about the 3 or 4 years that we'll plan to be on it, is that each year it does ask us to refine the plan to make it more robust or to change or add or drop things. And so, I think again, in a small school where everybody is doing all of the things, I appreciate your feedback on the plan because we put so much work into trying to make it meaningful and robust without being overwhelming, because I think that's the fear, is trying to do too much at any given time and just not having the capacity. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. The only other thing I was going to add is really more of a process question. Just general, I think it would be really great, to check in every few months, like maybe quarterly, at curriculum. It seems like a good place to do it, where we could just sort of have an update to keep the conversation going. Because I just remember last year learning about the plans, and then I remember a lot happened last year, and I was having a meeting with Lily, maybe it was in April, and I said, oh my God, like what's going on with those improvement plans or something? And she said, oh, actually, we're going to talk about that in the next meeting or something. But I think it would just be really great to try to, just to bring awareness to the community and attention of like how it's going. And then if things aren't going well, what we could work on, or, just to hear back from it.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I have a few questions for you. Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
It was very helpful. I'm encouraged by it. So thank you. I have a couple of questions that are kind of for all of the plans, but maybe I can ask them individually. I don't know. Once I ask, you can tell me if it's like easier to talk about it afterwards. But before I get into those, you talked about, I should have looked at this. I will say right now, like I got through 2 out of the 4 plans. We got them on Friday. It was like very, very,
They're very long.
they're
I'm
very
aware of
long,
that. They're
and I was
they're
very-
dense. I've
I worked very
experienced that as
hard.
well.
just couldn't quite get there. So I apologize. I should already know this. But I'm really encouraged to hear that last year you had the 10% increase in or decrease in absenteeism. What of the other things in your plan are ones that you that you're expanding instead of that are new, that you saw like positive outcomes from last year?
What are the things, are you asking like, what are the things last year that we did?
That you're continuing
expanding?
on because you saw positive outcomes?
So we had one lead teacher last year who ran ELA
Mhm.
PLCs once a week off of a Wednesday. And that's why we expanded that, was because we saw, folks, there's just not enough time in the day. And we're very fortunate to have every Wednesday, every other one's a faculty meeting, and every other one is PLC. And that's great. But the pressure to utilize that PLC for so many things, teachers really feel it. And so do we. And so like that was definitely one of the things that we got a lot of good feedback on. Again, when we're talking about alignment horizontally and vertically, it just takes, you you almost need to check in weekly to watch where you're at in that progression, and troubleshoot. And these programs are dense, and you have like, it's that there's the art of teaching is in how we select, how we utilize these programs, and that just takes time. And yeah, so that was one of the major ones that we expanded. We also utilized some of the grant last year to expand Sunrays somewhat. But it was one of those things that almost felt like it was like one, it was probably the one thing too many. We expanded, but we didn't really put the time and the energy into it to figure out that way, like, how is this actually going to address? So the two things in there that we added this year were the homework help time, along with the homework packets that are going home. And then we also expanded and did more deliberately into the school day, and have had those meetings about that and lining people up that are going to do that, which that was last year. I would say that was a coalition of the willing, just whoever could. And so now we're much more aligned in there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
In all of the plans, like there was mention of, some sort of tutoring or after-school support, or how does that work with teacher contracts with, I know I did see a line, maybe this is me just not, I would love to know more about there was always like a need for resources, and it was always listed there, understandably. But what is your thinking about being able to have teachers kind of cover lunch bunch, or whomever is going to cover like supporting after school care, all of these other really promising pieces? Like, do we have both the capacity and the funding, or do we think that we're going to in order to meet those plans?
Yeah, for us particularly, I think there is both the capacity and the funding, yeah, that's the simple answer. Yes,
Great.
there is, there's interest, and then being able to fund it, and that's the contractual piece, right? Asking teachers to give up a planning time to utilize. Otherwise, we would have to pay that on a timesheet out of the district, but we're able to pay for that through the SF, which makes it much more manageable and predictable.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's great news. And this is the question that I kind of have for all of the schools, but I would love to hear a little bit more about the process of really engagement, like the stakeholder engagement overall, and specifically the engagement with teachers. I saw the list of a great group of teachers that were involved on the forums, but I assume that there was much more than that, kind of informally. So I'm just curious kind of how that process was, and when and how teachers were able to be engaged.
One of the great things about the SF in particular is that it does allow some funding outside of the school day and outside of the school year for us to continue to plan. And I mean, we have amazing teachers, and they want to be doing this work. It's a matter of figuring out where are the areas of friction, what's stopping us from doing it, what's stopping us from getting together. And so I think for us, people want to do it, and the fact that we're able to pay for the meetings makes it super manageable.
Absolutely.
When does it happen? Like, when do you do it?
We do a lot of them during faculty time, right? On our faculty meetings on Wednesdays. We have tried to do different meetings at different times so that we can make it available to our caregivers. We use PTA meetings sometimes, certainly, to go over things, to run things by our caregivers. And then we have lined some up in the summer, which also works really well for our caregivers, because we can think outside of that, 8 to 2 when everybody else is at work too. So we've done some of those in the evening. We've done some on the weekends. Offering food is always helpful to getting people on board. Yeah.
And reimbursement for their time as well.
Pay them.
Caregivers, we didn't pay caregivers.
Oh,
No,
sorry.
but
Okay. Yeah, that's probably better off that you not pay them.
Do you have other?
I don't. Karen, do you have any questions you want to ask?
Okay.
Jill?
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Do you want to ask him?
Jill, you got it?
I think it just got answered. I knew you were gonna say that.
Come on down.
Thank you.
You can come sit with us.
Yeah, come hang out.
It's, I was gonna ask, to what extent um, these extra costs are paid for by the state's donations? Or are they completely covered? Are
Yeah.
they? Yeah,
Yeah.
then that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, that was an easy one. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to add to Keith's response to getting educator input, because one thing I really appreciate about the leadership at the table right now is that after they have a conversation with an educator where a concern arises, that gets woven into the conversation. So it's not an official meeting, but Keith might call me and say, oh my gosh, I just was talking with this reading teacher and here's some feedback I got. And here's an idea for how to structure staff meetings next year. And so I just want to share that because I really appreciate the relational trust that all of you are growing in your building for educators to have direct conversations with you about what they need. So thank you.
Thanks.
Keith, I also just, before we move on, want to give a shout out to your PTA. They came together this year. It was very exciting. They joined us at PTA council meetings, and it was so nice to have them represented at the table, and they were excited and ready to kind of learn and figure out what they could do. So I'm happy to see that you
Thank you for
building a
celebrating. They're
partnership.
pretty
Yeah,
wonderful
it's
people.
very
Yeah,
exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll pass it on.
Hello, good evening. I'm Jackie Richardson, building principal of Beverly J. Martin Elementary. As you take a look up here, our commitments are obviously the commitment to deepening engagement between our caregivers and our school community, as well as number two, our second commitment is strengthening the ability, our ability to provide aligned, cohesive, research supported and culturally and linguistically responsive curriculum. Both of these commitments are from our previous SCEP plan from the prior year. We felt that these commitments still held true and were identified as continual important commitments that both our families, our students, our staff, our overall community felt needed to be continued. As we are looking at our key strategies, the first one being improving our school to caregiver communication practices, protocols, systems. We recognized that this is something even from last year that is something that we're continually improving, adapting, and assessing. With the recognition that sometimes you have to make small tweaks and changes to make it improved. And of course, always listening to our caregivers to hear their response in their surveys, that there are still things and work to be done. So things that we are looking to do in terms of that specifically this year are looking at how do we support our staff in communicating to caregivers, particularly as it surrounds attendance. So this is one of the areas where, in terms of our key strategies, that we recognize that there was a nexus with the attendance, chronically absent students, and also the academic performance of students. So the question became like, what can we do in terms of communicating with caregivers that helps to support getting students in attendance more frequently, more consistently. And so, of course, we're always looking at our, like, what systems are already in place and how can we enhance those, improve on them. And so one of the things that we extracted, that we kind of like refined, again, was looking at like the protocols and how we're reaching our Black students and families, as well as now, because it's increased, to also include our economically disadvantaged students. As we recognize that 56% of our students, of our Black students, and 52% of our economically disadvantaged students were chronically absent last year. So as I said, the caregiver communication practices, we kind of, it sounds as though it's kind of a very, it could be spun as a very negative thing. So how do you like create a uplifting and a more positive intervention and positive systems? So we were looking at PBIS, which stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Systems. And one of the things is that how do we get our staff to support our families? What's one of the ways? So we looked at possibly having enacting like a telethon. So how do we reach families and grow connection is by having the staff members within our building reach to our family members and building specifically our chronically absent students from the previous year, right? And so having a connection to a staff member and having that one person be your contact helps to build trust and also an understanding with that staff member so that there's more of an open communication. So starting with telethons, really having an opportunity to just slow down, connect with the families, and have staff members reach out to families who are chronically absent. So identifying staff members who may already have connections with those families was important. And then having them identify who's going to communicate with them. So that was one of the things that we're doing. Another positive behavioral intervention that we decided to focus on is thinking about our school as like almost like a reward system. So we are the Tigers, BJM Go Tigers. And so what better thing to kind of build morale around and around attendance is to have a tiger without stripes. And then as we as a school gain in positive attendance, and that could be staff attendance, that could be student, like we're all in it, right? Student attendance, staff attendance, if done by class or overall school. So when we see a percentage increase of attendance, then we put a stripe up or multiple stripes, right? Because we want the reward to be frequent, right? We don't want to take a long time to see the end reward, right? So thinking of the kind of like weekly check-ins, who's showing improvement, and then adding a stripe to that tiger. When we fill up the tiger, there's other ways that other schools have done this too, like with jars and poof balls and things like that, right? But we're the tigers. So as this tiger begins to fill out, we will have school-wide celebrations which include families. So we really want to build that joy around, look, we're achieving this, we're all in this together. So that's one of the positive interactions and interventions that we're looking at that I'm excited to present on because it's very new. One of the other things that I want to highlight is that many of our students, of our Black students, we really want to like amplify their voices and get more of their student input and hear more from them. I might actually be skipping. I think, no, on the number 3, the amplify the voices of our Black students. So one of the things that we are looking at doing, of course, is having student advisory group. Now that is something that we had planned out from the previous year before, but this year we're really looking at how do we really make sure that that happens? Who's going to be in charge of it? How frequently do we need to meet? And we got in more of the weeds of how that's going to play out and flesh out this year. And having our students meet 4 times a year and potentially more to really build out the kind of school that they want to see. What are the things, what are the changes that they want getting the feedback about how are their classes going? What are you saying? How do you feel? What's the sense like? Do you have a sense of belonging? Those are all kinds of questions that we asked in our surveys. And we noticed that there was a lot of growth in that area, particularly for our students of color. Looking at the implement magnetic reading, I just want to make sure that I'm going through all of the things. So this will be the first year where we are implementing magnetic reading across grades 3 through 5. So this has to do more with our second commitment, which is a commitment to culturally responsive curriculum. And magnetic reading is what our teachers and staff on the grades 3 last year identified as a curriculum that was culturally responsive and engaging to the students. It was piloted and our entire district has adopted the magnetic reading for grades 3 through 5. So this will be the first year that it's going across those grade levels. And of course, looking at in-class intervention through grades K through 5 to really help to look at the data and help to assess where our students need support in terms of their academic sports, specifically looking in-class is new across all of our grades in our school and in our district as well. And we have an understanding that this is really going to help our teachers, our staff, our building leadership, and our families to better understand what their students need. Moving on to the next, creating quarterly facilitated PLC time during the school day to analyze student data. Last year, we had an opportunity to build in data days, which were very successful. This was an opportunity where we as a school had a community resource come into our school and work with the students by grade level. So for instance, if free science workshops came in, and we also had the Cornell Raptors, if I'm saying it right, I think it's the Cornell Raptors program. They also came in 2 separate days where our students were fully engaged in these really explorative opportunities. And the free science was amazing. Our students cheered, they got to explore different science experiments, and the teachers at that time, while their students were exploring science, they got to meet as grade levels and really dig down into the data. That had not really been done prior, and it was a wild success. One, as reported by staff, who said that was great. It really gave us an opportunity to meet as a grade level and really look at like, what can we do differently to meet the needs of our students, and to look at each individual student and where they were. So looking to kind of do more of those things is very much so written into this plan. So those are like the facilitated times where we are analyzing student data, and we hope to bring back very much so those exact types of learning community resources for our students. Again, looking at our ELA, our core ELA and math curriculum, also providing support to staff so that they are, again, having a better understanding of how to meet the needs of their students, but also in terms of instructional coaching from building leadership, moving into classes more, engaging with teachers to help figure out how are you doing as you are moving through magnetic reading. How is in-class working? So this is all built into the plan where we are very intentionally going in to meet with teachers to get a sense of how they are, their awareness is changing and shifting based on the data, as well as what do they need in terms of support. Moving to our last key strategy, extending curricular-based science, technology, engineering, STEAM, engineering, art, and math programming, and creating meaningful opportunities for all students. from our student surveys, many of our students felt that they wanted to do more hands-on, more explorative learning. They wanted science, they wanted engineering, they want technology. And it's not that we do not offer those things, it's that we really need to be very intentional about carving space, building space for it to happen more consistently and again, with intentionality. So building that into how we schedule, but also creating a space for it. We did not have a technology location in our school, so we used funds from our SCEP plan last year to build out a STEAM lab. And so we are this year thinking and not thinking, but this year we've built in time to have each class go into the STEAM lab as part of their science. So they will do their FOSS science kits in the STEAM lab. We've purchased programmable robots that can be reused again and again. We collaborated with Matt O'Donnell, who works in our district doing our IT and technology and integrating into classes. And really, he helped to build this out so that it was very student-centered. I hope that the board has an opportunity to come and look at our STEAM lab. It is somewhat under construction, but it is really coming together. So we have really built a very beautiful space for students, and we have all of the curriculum materials that are being loaded into that space now. And that is because of last year's plan. One of the board members just asked, like, what are the positive things? So that's a really positive build because it hadn't existed and now it's fully on its way. So that's what I have right now. Of course, I know that you'll have questions and I can probably elaborate. Go for it.
Would you like to? Oh, okay. Okay, I have a couple questions. One question is, can you just say a little more about the M-class intervention and just explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So M-class intervention, the best way to explain it is that it is a program that allows for us to analyze data on a much more individual student kind of platform, I guess. Like, so we can drill, I don't want to use the word drill, we can really focus, right, on each student and what they need specifically. So if we have assessed them with beginning of the year, right, assessments, and then we're looking at certain benchmarks that students are being provided and they're being given by teachers, right? We can then look at that. So the system is like a platform that helps to collate that information and essentially make it visual and digestible for teachers, families. It gives an assessment and a report out that families can look at. It has graphs, it has images, it helps explain the data, the very heavy kind of data that it's hard to look at if it's just listed. So user-friendly families can have a report from the M-class. And then also it helps us when we do those data days to look at specifically each student, where the areas of growth for each student based on a benchmark. So based on an assessment, we can look at what skills a student needs, and then teachers can then focus on that skill instead of repeating skills that the student doesn't really need or that they've already mastered, right? We can now look at, like, what does the student actually need? What skill do they have to practice? Do they have to learn? Do they need to review to be able to move on successfully? Does that help?
I just want to add to that, like, using that data, then M-class intervention will it provides sequenced lesson plans that interventionists then use. So it's a 10-day intervention cycle plan that is then has progress monitoring built into that instructional plan that then regenerates a new set of lesson plans. So it's a way to provide really structured lesson plans and targeted interventions that our teachers can use. So it expands, I think, our instructional toolbox for intervening with kids who are struggling.
Okay, thank you. The only other maybe like larger question I have, so I appreciate all of the aspects of the plan that are included. I feel like it's very broad. It addresses a lot of things, and it seems really robust in a lot of different ways. I like that you're setting the stage with, community engagement and CLRC and improving attendance. And those are all the things that are going to make for a better learning environment. The only question that I have, I guess, like one part that feels like it might be missing for me
Mhm.
is kind of like, how do you, like, what interventions occur and when do they occur when we identify, because you talked nicely about the assessment portion of things to figure out what are the needs. Like within the plan from Enfield, I saw, right, there was an after school program and there was some talk about some extra time to improve in some areas. I'm just wondering kind of like when during the school day or how are we going to implement the strategies to help the students, especially in light of like learning loss that might have happened from the COVID years and people who aren't passing the test who might need to be caught up a little bit before they could even get to grade level. So I'm just kind of wondering about that portion of things.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And so one of the things that we looked at is, and I think, again, this is kind of school-wide, but I'll speak for BJM. We really looked at our schedule and embedding in time for which would be considered WIN, or also kind of like RTI. There's a whole bunch of different acronyms, right? So RTI, looking at MTSS, also what I need. And so we are referring to it as these assessments that we are now like, that we now have based on our curriculum, right? That are built in will help us to assess better as educators what students need. And then during that what I need time, which is built into the schedule, teachers will work with each other, will work with small groups with students to help really address heterogeneous groups, also looking at pulling groups of students who might need more deeper interventions. It's really, when I say what I need, is what does the student need to be academically successful? That time is meant for that. That's where we are addressing the needs of each of our students. Doing extended days transportation. There's lots of issues and challenges. So we really had to look at like, what is the time that we have? What can we build in to meet the needs of our students while we have that time? And so we have time built into our master schedule that helps to provide those deep interventions to students, and also to challenge students who may not need as much deep intervention, right? Academic intervention. And so providing them with challenges and tailoring again to the individual need of that student. And so it's built into the schedule. And that is what this year is. We've really looked, and that's, again, that is what we're doing across the district. And BJM is right on the same path with it right there.
Okay, so this is my last question, then I'll turn it over. Do you feel like you have the support and the time in the school day, like enough time built in to address the needs? Because, right, that's going to be an important part of the implementation. So that's the next question.
So we have the time that we're given, and we're going to work with that time. And if you're asking me, would it be great to have more time? The answer is yes. Yeah, more time. Looking at our school day is relatively, if you're looking at other schools, it's relatively short in comparison, right? And so having more time built in where we expand that in the future, that would be wonderful. But right now, the time that we have, we're going to utilize it the best that we have and that we can do. And we are looking at, there are other programs aligning with other community resources that already have tutorial programs, helping to build like partnership with them. Those are things that will kind of always be doing, but we really do need to look at like, what can we do during the day? We can't do all of it, but we can really, really, really focus on what we're doing with the time that we have and make it the best that we have with intentionality.
Thanks.
I actually had a very similar question about the kind of remedial piece, because it sounds like you're doing a lot of great, like, new, reading curricula and being really creative with the way that you are meeting students' kind of learning needs. And I love that you're kind of using data to understand what kids found really engaging and can do more of that. But I actually don't have to answer the question anymore because you just answered it. And I just want to give like a little shout out to Win because I've been able to watch it implemented in our school. And I would definitely say that there's not enough time, but like, that's not, but having that time and allowing kids to kind of both seek out the kind of support that they need or in a smaller group or without people hearing, and also for teachers to kind of call upon them to go over things that they're missing, I think has had, at least in the school that I have seen deeply, has had like a pretty positive impact. I have no idea what the data show, but I've heard both from students and staff that it's a really important period of time throughout the day. So I appreciate you guys are using it so wisely. I'm trying to. I have just a clarifying question for it. Really great reading, is that K2 and then magnetic reading is 3 through 5 or yeah? Okay. And magnetic reading has already, like really great reading is new.
Really
For
great
K2.
reading. We have been using really great reading for a while now, for
Oh,
a few
okay.
years. Magnetic reading is new to grades 3 through 5. We piloted it last year at
Okay.
Beverly J. Martin in the 3rd grade. And I will also give a shout out to a teacher, Brooke Burnett, who really brought the awareness to not only our school and her grades 3 and then 4 and 5. She brought in other grade level teams, but also really, really connected with other teachers and educators, and her and also our data strategists really, really looked closely at this curriculum, and now it is being adopted by the entire district. And it is very representative. If you have an opportunity to look at it, you will see why she had such success with her class.
Excellent, thank you. And my last question is a similar question that I asked Keith, which is just about the process and the engagement with teachers. And, I saw the list of teachers that were actually listed on the application, but beyond that, like how you've used the last, I actually don't even know like, when did you start creating these? And I guess from then on, like, what did teacher engagement look like across the school?
So last year was the first year that we were identified where we had to write a plan.
Mhm.
We had stakeholders, community stakeholders, staff. It was open to all staff. So we had teachers, other staff, families, and other community representatives that were all part of that the initial last year's stakeholder group. As we moved through the plan, there's, teachers are very busy, but we're always kind of like being mindful of the SCEP plan. This year, I will say that we have, I think with the clarity and the focus on being reflective of what did work and what didn't work of last year will really help teachers and us to help connect teachers to the plan. I mean, it's the way that we wrote it this year was with all of the intentionality, all of the hands on the deck. And because it's in our plan, we have these data days, like teachers they're going to be right. They're in the plan. The work that they're doing is very much part of how we will be moving through the plan. So they're part of that. And their feedback, their surveys, right? Their feedback and surveys really did help to shape the things that we know we need to do this year and also last year, but this year very much so.
And what did most of that?
Same with students, right? Their survey responses
Right.
help to tailor and create this plan.
Yeah, it was wonderful to see all of the survey data in there. Whenever, as a parent, when you take that survey, you have no idea where that
Where does it
information is
go?
going and what it's
Where does
being
it go?
used for. So yeah, it was nice to see all of that and all of the plans. And was most of the planning during school hours with your teachers?
So so for this year's plan, what we worked on during the summer, And so staff, the staff that participated and the families that came, they came during the summer, and we created the plan while analyzing. So the implementation plan by the state really tells you what you need to do and how you need to do it. There's not much wiggle room. Here's who you're going to invite. Here's how you're going to break down and analyze it. We're all laughing because we know there's no wiggle room for how you get to do it. It's like, this is what you're going to do and this is how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And you're inviting people in, and it takes you step by step what you need to do to write this plan.
Thanks.
So we did have a representative implementation team,
Mhm.
and the team members will, I imagine, I hope, they will continue to expand people's schedules. Their own schedules will kind of, wax and wane based on what people can actually, the time that they can provide. But our teachers are very much so part of the plan because
Yeah.
we're
Deeply
all
in the
about data.
plan. Thank you. And my last question is, was the district able to compensate them for that time over the summer?
Oh,
For
the plan, so, yes.
Right.
We don't pay families, right? But our staff is compensated through timesheets, and those funds came from the SCEP, the SCEP budget that were provided.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can somebody, I don't know if anyone remembers, I think I remember the amount, but maybe for people at home who might be curious about the number of dollars of funding that we get when schools get identified. I don't know if does anybody in the room know the answer to that and feel comfortable sharing that with the community?
Yeah. So it depends on the classification. This year, the CSI schools got 250,000, or they get 250,000 for plan implementation. Our TSI schools each get $75,000, and then the district gets $50,000. So as we get $525,000 as a district this year for implementation of these plans.
Thanks. I thought it was that. I just wanted to call that out, just especially with the budget and just the environment that we're in right now, that people
Yeah.
understand that we have gotten some funding. This isn't all being paid for
Yeah.
by our tax dollars only. It's also some
Yeah.
funding.
I would say all of these plans are being fully funded with that state money. We're not, all of the activities listed are being fully funded, the grant.
Thanks.
Jill, Karen? anything you would-
Yeah.
All right.
Lauren.
All right. Good evening. I'm Lauren Wright. I'm the principal at Boynton Middle School. Let's see. Okay. Here are our commitments really focus in on 3 areas. The first being attendance. The second being targeted instruction in reading, writing, and math, with a particular focus on culturally responsive practices. And then the third, building relationships. So attendance, we know, is a huge piece in order for students to be successful. We need them to be present, and a little bit of a difference between our elementary colleagues. We also noted that we wanted to focus in on period attendance because in the secondary day, you need to be present in all of your classes. And there is the changing of classes and making sure that we're monitoring that as well as a part of this plan. For the second one, targeted instruction to improve reading, writing, and math skills. That was something that really came out of our student interviews. The culturally responsive piece, students are asking for their teachers to receive this training, and they are able to tell, and they notice when a teacher has had it and when they haven't. And so they're really asking for all of our staff to go through that training. So we have built several goals into the plan around that. And then finally, building relationships. And this is you can see throughout the plan, it's in many different ways, relationships between adults in the building, relationships between students and adults, and students to students. So we have a few different ways that we're hoping to target that as well.
So I'm Tara Kaiser. I'm the associate principal at Boynton, but I was at DeWitt last year. I mean, one thing that both schools did was we interviewed students in addition to the district level interviews that went out. We had small group or one-on-one interviews with children. And I know both plans incorporated that information significantly. Personally, I found that those interviews were incredibly informative. Having an opportunity to talk with kids, either in a small group or one-on-one, about what is and is not working for them and what they do and don't want to see moving forward, was incredibly powerful.
Okay, so we listed out just a few of our key strategies. And so to start off, restorative justice. This is something that at Boynton, we're really heading into year 3 of doing a lot of work with restorative justice and training. We have contracted with Dr. Wynn for the past 2 years in implementing that throughout the building. And we have a extremely strong team who has been able to really just take things to the next level. Huge shout out to DM McGrath, who's now over at DeWitt, but he was a huge part of that. And one of the beautiful parts of being part of this plan now is that we are able to use some funds to continue to work with Dr. Wynn. So we already have dates scheduled with him. He will be coming back to run trainings. I believe it's 3 times throughout the school year. And we'll be able to offer that not only to staff, but also to students as well, which is what we had done in the years prior. And I think what made it really successful, continuing to train students to be leaders of this work as well. So we're very excited to be able to keep that going. SEL focused home bases. We've had home base at Boynton for years, but one tweak that we've made is that we started to ask our 7th and 8th graders at the end of last year, we asked them, who do you want to start your day with? If you could, pick any teacher, it doesn't have to be a teacher that is going to teach the grade level that you're going into next year. Just like, who do you have a relationship with? Who do you want to start your day with? And doing our best to build home bases off of that feedback. So I'm really excited to see how that goes. Kids have told us, again, from those surveys, that was something that came out, like home base, the slow start to the day, being able to start the day thinking about something that's maybe not academically focused is like very important to them. And so now being able to do it with an adult that they trust and potentially a couple of friends that they're connected with as well, I think will be a huge, it's just a huge shift in how we start our morning together. The next piece, common assessments. We have a lot of framework that's already been set up in terms of our PLC and the PLC structure that we have to be able to support this. And this just really seems like the next step. We had done some work with this in years past, but we're gonna refocus on making sure that common assessments are being given at all grade levels in math, science, social studies, and ELA at least once per year. And we also, as part of the plan, also built in time to then review the data that we get from that, and teams will be able to come together to figure out what that data is telling us and how we want to use that to drive our teaching. The next one, increased participation in the identity strand and TCI's training. So we have a pretty strong start with our identity strand. We have a number of teachers at Boynton who have been completed that and have been trained with the identity strand. So our goal is for anyone who hasn't done that, their focus will be the identity strand. And if they have already done the identity strand, their focus will be TCIS. So kind of tearing things out. And we're gonna partner with the trainers for those to see how we can offer that either through PLC time or possibly through our staff meeting time, so that there's lots of opportunities for that to happen. And then our final strategy that we listed on here, which I'm extremely excited about, is AVID in 6th grade. So prior to this school year, all 6th graders took a course called Enrichment, which was a course that's kind of changed over the course of the years as far as what happened in that class. It was really teacher driven in terms of what it was focused on, or how teachers were meeting the needs of kids in that class. And we're gonna change course, and we have trained 9 teachers this summer, have completed AVID training. And they're ready to roll with rolling AVID out for all 6th graders. So that's going to be just a wonderful base for all of our 6th graders to have that the course and the skill work that takes place, as well as the community building that is woven into that course. I taught AVID at the high school, so I'm very excited to be able to use this plan to make that happen for the middle school. Let's see. And then here are our success targets. And so we're hoping to see a decrease of students who are chronically absent, decrease to 10%. We're hoping to see a 10% increase on our performance for ELA and math, the state exams. And we are hoping to have 85% of our staff complete the identity strand. Hoping to see more positive feedback from students around their experience in home base. 75% of our families we're hoping will report that they are feeling that their child feels that they're connected and well cared for when they're at school. And then finally, we're hoping to triple the number of staff who have completed restorative justice training by the end of the year. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna be very mindful of time, so I'm only gonna ask like one of my questions. So one of the things that you didn't highlight that I saw also that was in the plan was that there's gonna be some like 9th period and Saturday school,
Yeah.
which I was like very excited to see, as in addition to all the other things that you have in the plan. I was just wondering how students are gonna be like told about that, and how that's gonna be implemented, and people being selected for that or directed toward that, how that's gonna work.
Yeah, so that is a great question. That is, it's a program that we've had in the past, but again, these funds will allow us to expand that and push into the Saturday school, because that is something that we haven't had in a few years. And we're hoping to be able to identify that through some of the data that we have, like within the first 5 weeks or so. We'll take a look at that, and we have a pretty good system of teachers reaching out to students that they're noticing that they think might be great for that. But we also allow families to say, this is something that I want my child to participate in.
Our hope is also to target some of the specific skills, right? So a particular teacher being able to teach a particular group of students with the same reading needs on a consistent basis. So some of it will be targeted selection of data we already have, in addition to data as we go.
Thanks.
And it was only not included because I was trying to keep to fewer bullets.
No, I understand. That's okay.
I have a kind of pessimistic, bigger question, I guess, for everybody that has occurred. Like, so many of these things sound really, really exciting. And when I look at like the AVID thing, just as an example, like the high school just had to get rid of that because of funding. you're able to do that because you have extra funding, but the hope is that you're not on the list next year and you won't have this funding anymore. Like, what is the kind of, anyone can speak to, like, what is the long-term plan? Like, you're putting in so many amazing things and like putting in a program like this versus some of the other things. Is the hope that it can be maintained somehow, or?
So the first piece in terms of the FTE, the FTE is something that it's built into our school day. Like, it is necessary for that class to be there, and it has been sort of up to our teams is how we're using it. And so now we're saying that we have this program that we know is great for kids, and we have this FTE it's great, that's not going away. So let's put those two together so we can utilize that resource.
Excellent. That's great.
I will add, like, this type of instruction has already existed during this time.
Okay.
It hasn't been standardized and it hasn't been consistent. Now it will be standardized and consistent between both buildings, hitting kids at a perfect time, coming into middle school where we're now teaching executive functioning and many other things, right? But we're teaching skills that they're going to need to be successful. And we were already doing that. We just were not doing it systematically and consistently between classes and between buildings. So the teachers were already teaching that class. It was just the actual content itself was not the same.
Great. Thank you. I will ask.
I wanted to point out
Oh.
with the Avid that it was an external program brought into the high school. And what they're doing this year, what the hopes we were told is that internally they're training people. And what you did
Correct.
this summer is trained educators with Avid, which Avid as a national program started from middle school throughout high school anyway. So it's individuals that our staff members who are trained to carry it out, which is what the high schools do.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. I will ask one more question, but only because I can ask Boynton and DeWitt at the same time. I know.
Mhm.
Dr. Nguyen, you all have worked with Dr. Nguyen for a couple of years now, you said, and we had that great presentation from students last year on the restorative justice work. I have no idea how much Dr. Nguyen costs, but I'm just curious if there are opportunities for like a train the trainer model or something like that, either between schools or for your school now, or if we do need to keep paying him to come and do that work, or if we could use that money elsewhere.
Yeah, there's definitely opportunities for that. And we have a district level restorative justice team. And we have a number of folks from Boynton who are on the team. We've already started with last year, they did road shows, they called them, where they visited all of the buildings and did some of that training. So there's definitely opportunities for us to be able to take it on ourselves and eventually.
But not yet.
Not yet.
We're not
Okay.
we're not at capacity yet.
Okay.
And bringing him back and getting another school involved to understand the 5 Ps, the 5 pedagogical stances, which are key to his work,
Mhm.
which also connect wonderfully to our SCEP plans and for our identified populations. It keeps certain things at the forefront of our brain
Mhm.
as we're having these conversations with our students. And so we will get to capacity. We just need a little bit more time, and these funds are helping us to do that, and partnering with the 2 middle schools is also really helpful to balance those costs.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pass of time.
All right, thank you. Sorry I was late. We're having an event up at DeWitt, and Angela and Stephen are up there holding down the fort, so they wanted to be here, but I thank them for staying up there. So at DeWitt, we have 2 commitments. Our first commitment is to build community and make sure that we're focusing on engaging practices, and restorative practices are going to be the way that we're going to do that. We're going to implement this with staff and students, with having Dr. Nguyen come in to train all of us. We're also going to make sure that our student support team is trained to make sure that conflict resolution circles can happen when conflict arises. And that's going to be an important piece to make sure that students everyone in the building, all community members are able to have their voices heard and sit at the table, resolve what conflicts are occurring, whatever they are, and come back into the school environment, the classroom environment, and be ready and feel heard and engaged for learning. So that is our first goal, and we're committed to make this happen. Our second is to improve reading, writing, math skills using high-impact teaching strategies. High-impact teaching strategies are research-based strategies that, when we use, are effective for all students, wherever they're applied. It's not perfect. Sometimes things can go wrong, but they are designed to make sure that students are gaining and improving where we're using them. So focusing on them will help all of our students, including our identified population. Our key strategies, DeWitt hasn't really engaged in restorative justice PD, so we're making sure that we're bringing that to the entire community of staff and students. As Lauren said, it's already planned. That's what we're going to do this year. And we're starting at a different level than Boynton is, and we're gonna catch up. So we're gonna do our conflict resolution circles with our student support team. And again, that's just gonna help navigate situations that come up in middle school, whether it be between peers, any situation that occurs in the school, we can use these circles, and having more people trained to do that will just, the reach will be greater. High impact teaching strategies are hits in the classrooms, making sure they're happening. Again, they're evidence-based, so using those, we will be able to improve our reading, writing, and math scores. And then peer observations, because again, things happen, people miss a training. But if we have examples where we know it's happening in a different school or within our school, having an opportunity for teachers to go in and watch other teachers doing a really great job of it, it helps build that capacity that way. So that's what we want to do, is peer observations. Some success targets, making sure our staff are trained in community building strategies. We want students to do that as well. We want 60% of students that go through those conflict resolution circles to report that those conflicts or those concerns haven't recurred. Increasing use of hits in the classroom as we talk about how we're going to do observations, making sure it's clear that this is going to be something we're looking at. How are they being used in the classrooms while we are observing, and how they fit in that Davidson rubric that we're using. And then 75% of our students that score a level 1 or 2 on the common assessments that we build and give, how do we make sure that they have a support lab into their schedule as a result of that common assessment? So making sure that we get that data, provide those supports to help them improve.
Thank you. The support labs, can you just tell me a little bit more about like when those happen and if what students are missing in order to attend them?
So most students can fit them into their schedule. So they're not missing anything. They might be missing a study hall. So there are students where, depending on the level of need, it's harder to schedule, but it's at times during band and orchestra, chorus, PE, world language exploratory, those types of classes, that's when it's occurring in our schedule. So for our 6th and 7th graders, the majority of students that need those supports, it's able to be scheduled into their day. When in 8th grade, where they might be engaging in algebra or earth science and sports, things get busier, not that sports are during the day, but they want the study hall to make up for the time that they're at the sport. So it gets a little more convenient in 8th grade, but it does work within a day for most students.
Thanks. And for like the HIT seems like it's going to be a great opportunity to improve instruction moving forward. But for those students who are already quite behind, are they going to be like starting the year with these support labs, or are you waiting until you use like a common assessment to?
So students are based on a recommendation from the previous year. There are some students that start each year in support lab. So students that
Okay.
have certain levels on the M class coming in from fifth grade, if we have that data, we'll use that data to say they need some targeted support in ELA. If there's a math assessment that we can use when we get those common assessments, teachers are seeing what's happening as well, and they're recommending. We use the RTI process to get students in there quickly when they can.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nothing?
Well, I mean, I have a few other questions, but I'm looking at the clock and it's 5:58, so maybe we'll have a chance to ask a few more questions at the general board meeting. Just to put back out there one more time that it would be really great for everybody to come back a few times over the course of the year so that we could continue the conversation, talk about it a little more, see how things are going, see if there's any other places that we could help improve as a district, and maybe go from there. And just want to thank everybody so much for coming tonight, for presenting the plans. There's a lot of amazing ideas in the plans. Certainly a lot to work with. And hopefully we'll be able to see some improvement based on the improvement plans. Anybody else have anything before we conclude for tonight?
Just thank you all for being here, for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Question.
Thank you. So we'll adjourn for tonight and stay tuned for the full voting meeting next.
Listen.